So there's been so much talk and debate about the great unwinding of the yen carry trade. Uh, how do you think the recent fluctuation is going to play into that process?
Right. I think again, there's the fundamental backdrop is as we discussed at the very beginning, which is that the interest rate sort of expected interest rates between Japan and the rest of the world beginning to change. I mean, all through this tightening cycle globally, which began in 22, they did begin to exit the unorthodox policies in late 2023. But wait a minute, 2022, sorry. But it was a long and slow exit, and we only really now have a 25 basis point policy rate. So Japan really was the odd man out, and that's one of the reasons why these carry positions built up. Um, from here, especially if the global trend toward interest rates is going to be a lot lower, I find it hard to believe that Japanese rates are going to defy that trend significantly. There's a couple reasons for that. The first is that Japanese inflation does tend to be correlated with global inflation. And so if global inflation is eventually, not today and tomorrow, but eventually going to be low enough to permit an easing cycle, including one that the Fed fully participates in, inflation in Japan is going to calm down as well, I would say. And if inflation is down, it's going to be difficult for the Bank of Japan to keep plowing forward. So that's kind of number one. Number two, the other thing about the Bank of Japan that's interesting relative to other central banks is there isn't much of a long-term guidance for where interest rates should be, at the end of the cycle, or a neutral interest rate, as it were. The Fed has the dot plot. Many European central banks have forecasts or fan charts or some guidance as to where policy will or should be, over the medium to long term. And Japan really doesn't have that. Now, I think that they have been considering this, and I think that if it's put forward and it's low enough, that would probably stop the yen carry trade from unwinding in a very, very messy manner. But that's one of the things that I think the market really needs in order to have some certainty about where that interest rate differential is going to settle. And that leads to the final point, which is uncertainty itself. Normally we can think of uncertainty in market terms as volatility, and volatility is a killer in itself of a carry trade. If you have, roughly speaking, 5 percentage points difference between U.S. rates and Japanese rates, if your volatility is, let's say, less than half of that, so 10% or less, well, you could say you got a 50% or better chance of realizing that carry differential. But once vol spikes, because you don't have the certainty, Japanese rates have become unmoored, who knows how high they're going to be, let's have some more volatility. The same differential is not as attractive because the likelihood of realizing it is quite a bit lower, and we've seen that in a pretty brutal fashion in the last couple of weeks. So I think it's pretty important for the Bank of Japan to put forward a more medium-term guidance for where rates are going to be that's some variant of what other central banks do.